My name is Tsang. I'm the CMO as well as the SVP of products at Vocus. So for those of you who are in the DC area, we're in lovely Beltsville, Maryland, about 1 o'clock on the Beltway. So since I run marketing for Vocus and also build software for about 120,000 customers who use it for marketing, I wanted to talk about mobile marketing, and I want to keep it simple. I want to talk about 3 things you should be doing now. If you're not doing, you really have to be doing it. And 3 things to think about for the future. Okay, so real quick, there's a lot of talk about mobile. We have a product called pureweb.com. Some of you may know about it. We host news releases, and we attract a lot of people. And we've been tracking mobile visits to it. And during 2012, it was just crazy. That's the middle part where the percentage of visits from mobile devices really accelerated. And it peaked right after the holidays last year when everyone opened up, and got new tablets and got new phones. But for 2013, it really has kind of stabilized. So, you hear a lot about marketing, mobile marketing getting bigger and bigger. I'm here to tell you that it's actually starting to stabilize. Okay, so this is sort of, for us, at least in the news business, I think this is sort of where we are, about 35 to 40% of visits. And a couple of other points to say that. In Korea, North Korea, this is a Mary Meeker slide. If those of you who have never seen her slide, she's great. It's also showing a slowdown in mobile queries. Now, it's not true for everybody. There's some, like commerce is still coming on strong. So for instance, Groupon's number of deals coming from mobile continues to climb. But I would suspect if this is February, that if you map out the rest of 2013, it'll start to slow as well. So we should all plan for the number of visitors, the percentage of visitors coming to our sites to be about 35 to 50%, depending on the kind of business that you're in. All right, so given that, what are the 3 things you ought to be doing right now? Okay, and for some of you, it will be very simple. We've talked a bit about responsive design, got to do it. And for those of you who have lucky enough to have developers working for you, you can, of course, they can build it from scratch. You can find lots of templates online. Or if you use a vendor, whatever vendor you use, make sure they do responsive templates, and then it'll be out of the box. So that's very simple. Not all of us have done it, and Vocus, it took us quite a while to get all our landing pages, our website, and all our emails over to responsive design. It's there now, but it certainly took longer than I would have wanted. 2, optimize for mobile search. It is obvious, but there's a couple of stats that I think are really important. So for those of you who work for clients who have a retail location, or if you have a retail location, every time I pull out my phone to do a search, right, according to Google, 40% of the time I have a local intent. So I'm trying to do something locally. Okay, so certainly if you have a retail presence, this is probably your most important optimization. Forget about SEO so much, make sure that you are optimized for local listings. In fact, an example here, when you drill down, you get to a Google Talk, in this case, a Google Plus page. This is actually, I think, a really important stat as well. 45% of my mobile searches are goal-oriented, okay? And I'm trying to make a decision. So, people say, hey, on e-com, perhaps you're making the transaction on the desktop, but I'm doing my research here, okay? I'm making a decision here. And so for marketers, one of the things I think about is, all right, what am I trying to do at all parts of the buying cycle? This is a part of the buying cycle now. Okay, the other thing I want to talk about is responsive content. I made up that term, but it's really content that works across all devices. So I'm going to do a shameless plug here. We have our own marketing conference. It's called Demand Successes in DC, and we just announced it. So we wanted to make sure we produce content that worked for all devices. Okay, so here's the registration page. It's optimized for the desktop. The blog post is optimized to be a quick read on your phone. The Facebook update, of course, is there. Luckily, Facebook worries about mobile, so we wanted to have a real quick hit on Facebook. Our email newsletter is mobile optimized, although I have a problem with the spacing. I'm going to go back and talk to them about that. And there's our tweet, of course. And the good news is, let me show you a video from last year when we had Ariana Huffington. The good news is that a lot of the vendors out there that you're going to deploy your content on as marketers are already mobile optimized. And one of the things that have happened this year with the new devices that we have with the bigger screens and ubiquitous Wi-Fi is things that seemed impossible in the past, like video, now actually display very well. Okay. Now you can do it yourself. It's going to be expensive. It's going to be a pain. If you use YouTube, it's right there, right? So we feel comfortable now deploying our videos all over via YouTube. We're taking advantage of their technology. Now, a couple new things that we're doing. If you haven't used Twitter timelines, it's basically taking tweets together, that tell a story. So last year we had a great conference, a lot of fantastic tweets about it. I put it together in a timeline. When I'm here, I want to read bite-sized content, nothing long. Once again, I'm hoping to make a decision. Whether or not I actually complete the transaction here remains to be seen. So give me content that encourage me to go down the buying cycle. So bite-sized content here. This is perfect. There's a lot of tweets to go through. You can read it at your leisure. Nothing is too overwhelming. Now, if you have an audience that's younger, I encourage you to use Snapchat. I'm taking a look at the average age. I had to force myself to use Snapchat. It's very interesting. It's very, very interesting. If you're a marketer, you haven't tried it, download it right now. Snapchat with your colleagues, find your nieces and nephews, Snapchat with them is one of the ways that we will be able to reach the teens and the folks in the lower 20s. Okay, we're probably not going to use it for Vocus because that's not our audience. But if it were, we'll be all over it. Okay. Now, so 3 things to think about, or some of you are perhaps even doing. One, of course, is to use geolocation. So this is a mobile conference, and I'll use a couple of examples. These are examples for you to think about. These are the things I'm thinking about for our product as well as for our marketing. One is use everybody's geolocation. So there's technology out there like Waze that uses everyone's geolocation, to bring value. A conference like this would also be an example. There's conference apps that really hook us up all together using everyone's geolocation. Now, there will be apps that will come out that will where you can actually connect to someone as they walk by. There's a lot of talk about that at this conference already. Some of those will use geolocation. As you walk by the Starbucks, you can go ahead and make an offer. People can find you right there, right now. This is really important. The bad news is that there's going to be a lot of apps that will do this and fail. Okay, this is frontier land. The early frontiers, most of them will die. We will probably get a lot of false starts here before something real comes along. Okay, so use this as an experiment a few times, but know that there's not going to be a platform that will be that will exist. We don't know what the platform is going to be. Okay, also discovery. There's some apps that basically say as you drive by. Here's another one. It's called. This is the Google one. I forget what it's called, but it will tell you as you drive by what's going on. And of course, for those of you who have ever used Uber, this is a great example of using location to disrupt the mainstream cab service. Now, a couple of other things. You can also think about location as authentication. So remember a couple of years ago, the Bump app was very, very popular? Okay. Well, the Bump app seemed like it was magic. It actually used 2 things. It basically said if there was 2 phones that had the same movement, so it used the accelerometer in the same place, okay, location, then someone's bumped. So if you and I bumped and we wanted to trade, actually you would bump to trade contact information, accelerometer, geolocation, and you swapped information. So another example of, and basically it's authentication, this is me, that's you. A more modern version of that is Square Wallet. For those of you, if you ever use Square Wallet, you know that, hey, I'm going to use Square Wallet. I'm going to see who takes Square right around near me. Well, I see there's a Starbucks, but if you look closely, it says, hey, you are too far to pay. So in other words, you're not near that Starbucks. You're too far to pay. However, you're pretty close to this consulting organization, and there you can pay. Okay, so interesting. People are using it. Think about this as location as a way to authenticate who you are. Okay, and what can we do about that as marketers? The second thing is that everything analog has become digital. One of the banes of my existence as a CMO is that I want to track everything. Right? I want to track absolutely everything. Everything should be trackable. Where it gets hard would be like a conference. What impact did this conference have, for Vocus? And if I have a retail store, how do I track my customers? So what's happening now is, those of you who are marketers, you understand this page. This is a Google Analytics. How many people have come to your website? How many people have been repeat visitors? How much time have they spent on site? Well, here's another company called Euclid. If you take a look at this, you may say, oh, it's just the competitor to Google Analytics. But this is different. This is tracking everyone that came to your store. But you can take a look at the metrics. It's how long did they stay? How many of them were new visitors? Okay? And essentially taking analog and making it digital. And you can see that in the future, the problems that we marketers have in tracking everything will go away. And just be ready for that day when everything can be tracked, including visits. And the way they track visits is through your phone. So as you come in, your Wi-Fi signal is being detected, and they'll know, if you've come here before, and how long you've stayed. Okay. The other thing I've heard, we talked about, some people have talked about this already today, is micro-location. So in the new iPhones, there's iBeacon. Basically, it's a low-energy Bluetooth. Okay. In my phone, there's Bluetooth, low energy. These things can be enabled, and so we can talk to other Bluetooth devices. So if you have an iPhone, I have this, we will soon be able to talk to each other phone to phone. Okay. And if I pass by this podium that has a iBeacon, it can say, hey, you're at the podium, maybe you're a speaker, here's the apps that you have available to you. Okay, think about that. It's going to be pretty interesting, and this one's coming on fast. The example that Apple's doing is they're putting it in about 200 Apple stores. I haven't seen it live yet, but I'm going to go try. So you come to the store, it knows that you're at the store, and by the way, as you pass by the iPhone kiosk, it makes you an offer. So micro-location, not GPS, but hooked on to everything from possibly this lectern to my phone, to my dog. Everything is trackable now. Okay, lastly, the thing I want to talk about is, in fact, the phone as a tricorder. So this is a Star Trek reference, but there's a lot of power in this phone. Think about using it. At the very least, there's a lot of data, a lot of software. For those of you who haven't used Google Now yet, Google Now basically looks in your email, looks in your calendar, looks at your searches, looks at your map data, and basically tries to just consolidate your life for you, become an assistant for you. So every time I look, it basically says, hey, hey, I know you're kind of going to work this morning. I'm going to tell you ahead of time that it will take you 19 minutes to get to work. By the way, that's a really nice commute in the DC area, so that's fantastic. Here's my next call, and then some of the stocks that I track. So a lot of good data. I also use this sleep app. Okay, so I have a sleep app on here, and I put it under my pillow before I go to sleep, and it tracks sound and movement, and then to basically get a sense of how well I'm sleeping. Okay, it used to be that you have to put a band on, you have to do all that, but it will track sound and movement and tell me how much sleep I have. Now, we can be a little too clever. About a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, there was an app out called Color. Color was a very highly hyped startup in Silicon Valley. And what they did was, hey, if we all use color, we would create a network social group immediately, right? So we would be, we would be together. We would show all of us. We would take photos and share. And the example that the CEO used, which I thought was unbelievably fascinating, was if, let's say, I was a rock band, you guys were in the audience, and you're taking photos of me, okay? We're all using color. Basically, they would use the GPS to say, okay, you guys are all around the same place. It would use the microphone to say, it's really loud in here, so you're right here rather than say next door, okay? So it would use the ambient sound. It would use, of course, the camera so you can take photos. And it would use the compass to say, when you were taking photos, you guys were pointing up here, okay? And oh, by the way, since everyone's pointing up here, I must be the singer, and you have the closest phone, so your photo gets highlighted, okay? So that was color. It didn't go anywhere, way too ambitious, but it kind of used that as a way to think about what the phone can do, how powerful it can be, and what else can you do. Now let me tell you about the final thoughts. Say, hey, come on, aren't we too early? The other stuff, the first three things I talked about, do now, do yesterday. The next few things, the beacons, the tracking, using the phones, are we too early? I've actually had a long talk with my CTO about this, and he's fairly skeptical. But once I said this, he said, you're right. And that is, the average replacement time for a mobile phone is less than 2 years, okay? So if he came up to me and says, hey, it's too early to do, BLE, to do Bluetooth Low Energy, I'll tell him that 2 years from now, everyone will have it, okay? So, the cycle for innovation on mobile is very, very high, and I encourage you to take advantage of it. So that's all I have. 3 things to do now and 3 things to think about. And if you have any questions, come by, and I'm happy to answer anything you have. Thank you.